The ultrasound hit the marble floor with a sharp crack that echoed through the executive suite like a gunshot. Lila Monroe watched in horror as Damian Cross, the billionaire CEO, who'd fired 3 people that morning before his second coffee, bent down and picked up the one piece of evidence she'd fought for 11 weeks to keep hidden. His steel-gray eyes scanned the image. Found the date. And in that terrible, silent moment between heartbeats, she knew her carefully constructed world was about to detonate. Before we dive into what happens next, I need you to do me a favor. Hit that like button right now. Drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from. I want to see how far this story travels. And stick around until the end, because what unfolds here is going to leave you speechless. Trust me on that. The thing about working on the 47th floor of Cross Industries was that you learned pretty quickly how to become invisible. Lila had mastered it over the past year. Head down, voice soft, efficiency cranked to maximum. She'd slip in before dawn, leave after dark, and in between, she'd execute her job as executive assistant with the kind of precision that made powerful men forget she was even human. Most days, that suited her just fine. Today was not most days. Monroe. Damian Cross's voice cut through the morning chaos of ringing phones and clicking keyboards like a blade through silk. Lila's fingers froze over her laptop. Around her, the other assistants suddenly found pressing reasons to look extremely busy. Nobody wanted to be in Damian Cross's line of sight when he was using that tone. She turned slowly. He stood in the doorway of his office, 6 feet 2 inches of tailored charcoal suit and controlled fury. His dark hair was perfectly styled, his jaw tight, and those eyes, Christ, those eyes, were fixed on her with an intensity that made her stomach drop. "Sir?" "My office. Now." He disappeared back through the glass door without waiting for confirmation. Of course he didn't wait. Damian Cross didn't ask. He commanded, and the world rearranged itself accordingly. Lila grabbed her tablet and stood, ignoring the sympathetic glance from Rebecca at the neighboring desk. Rebecca had been here long enough to witness 3 executive assistants wash out in as many months. The job paid phenomenally well, which was why Lila had clawed her way into it despite having 0 connections and a resume that screamed struggling single woman who can't afford to fail. She needed this job, desperately, which was why the positive pregnancy test hidden in her purse was such a catastrophic problem. "Close the door." Damian didn't look up from his desk as she entered. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed him against the Manhattan skyline, making him look like some kind of corporate god surveying his kingdom. His office was all clean lines and expensive minimalism, black leather, chrome, and glass. No photos, no personal touches, nothing that suggested a human being actually worked here. Lila closed the door with a soft click and stood with her hands clasped, tablet pressed against her chest like a shield. "You needed something?" "The Morrison account." He still didn't look at her. "Walk me through what happened." Her mind went blank for a terrifying second. The Morrison account? She'd handled that deal 3 weeks ago, delivered the contracts ahead of schedule, received a rare nod of approval from Damian himself. Why was he? "I reviewed the documentation last night," he continued, finally lifting his gaze to hers, "found some irregularities." Irregularities. The word landed like a stone in her gut. What kind of irregularities? The kind that suggests someone wasn't being thorough. He leaned back in his chair, fingers steepled. Or honest. The accusation hung between them, sharp and ugly. Lila felt her face flush. She'd been meticulous with that account, obsessive even. She'd triple-checked every clause, every number, because that's what you did when working for a man who'd built a billion-dollar empire by trusting nothing and no one. "I was thorough," she said, fighting to keep her voice level. "If there's an issue, I'd like to know specifically what—" "You dated one of the junior partners at Morrison." The words hit like a slap. Lila's breath caught. "That was 2 years ago, before I even worked here. And you didn't think that was worth mentioning?" "It didn't seem relevant. We went on 3 dates. It ended badly. He's not even with the firm anymore. He's the CFO's nephew." Damian's voice was deadly quiet now. "And he reached out to legal yesterday asking questions about the terms you negotiated. Interesting timing, don't you think?" Oh God. Brad. She hadn't thought about Brad Morrison in months, had barely thought about him when she'd been handling his uncle's company's contracts. The relationship, if 3 awkward dinners and 1 worse kiss even counted as a relationship, had been a blip. Forgettable. Apparently Brad disagreed. I didn't know, Lila said, hating how defensive she sounded. I swear I had no idea he'd... Your personal life is your business, Monroe, until it becomes mine. Damien stood, moving around the desk with that predatory grace that made him so unnerving in negotiations. I need to know if there's anything else you haven't told me, any other conflicts of interest I should be aware of. He stopped 3 feet away, close enough that she could smell his cologne. Something expensive and understated that probably cost more than her monthly rent. Close enough that she had to tilt her head back to meet his eyes. And that's when it happened. The nausea that had been lurking since she'd woken up suddenly surged with vicious intensity. Lila's vision swam. Her tablet slipped from her fingers, and she made a desperate grab for it, but her coordination was off, her hands clumsy. The tablet bounced off the edge of the desk and spilled the contents of her partially open purse across the floor. Pens, her phone, receipts, a half-empty pack of gum, and the ultrasound photo she'd picked up from her doctor's office yesterday. Time seemed to slow as the small black and white image fluttered down, landing face up directly between Damien Cross's polished Italian leather shoes. No. Lila dropped to her knees, reaching for it, but Damien was faster. He bent and picked up the photo before she could grab it, his expression shifting from irritation to confusion as he registered what he was holding. What is this? She couldn't speak, couldn't breathe. Could only kneel there on the marble floor of her boss's office while he studied the ultrasound image that would destroy everything she'd worked for. His eyes found the date printed in the corner. November 15th, 11 weeks ago. The night of the company gala. Recognition flickered across his face, just for a second, but she saw it, saw the exact moment he did the math. Stand up. His voice had gone flat, emotionless. Lila forced herself to her feet, legs shaking. She wanted to run, wanted to disappear, wanted to rewind the last 60 seconds and make different choices. But she just stood there, watching her entire life implode in slow motion. Damien's jaw worked. He looked at the ultrasound again, then at her. My office. Now. We're already in the private one. He gestured toward a door she'd never seen him use. Move. He wasn't asking. Lila followed him through the door into a smaller room she hadn't known existed. This one did have personal touches, bookshelves lined with leather-bound volumes, a wet bar in the corner, and on the desk, a single framed photo of a little girl with dark curls and Damien's same gray eyes. His daughter, Sophia. 6 years old if the office gossip was accurate, raised by Damien alone after his wife had died in childbirth. The door clicked shut behind them. Sit. Lila sat. Damien remained standing, the ultrasound still in his hand. For a long moment, the only sound was the muted hum of the city 47 floors below. Is it mine? The question was so quiet she almost didn't hear it. Lila's throat felt like sandpaper. Yes. You're certain? Yes. Another silence, longer this time. Damien set the ultrasound on his desk with careful precision, then turned to face her fully. His expression was unreadable. That same mask of control he wore in every board meeting, every negotiation, every moment of his meticulously managed life. The gala, he said. November 15th. Yes. That's the only time we... Yes! He exhaled through his nose, a sharp, controlled breath. Why didn't you tell me? Lila let out a sound that was half laugh, half sob. Tell you? Tell my billionaire boss that I'm pregnant with his baby after a one-night stand? How exactly does that conversation go? Better than dropping an ultrasound at my feet 3 months later. I wasn't planning on dropping it anywhere. She stopped, swallowed hard. I was going to resign. After the holidays, find something else. You'd never have to know. Never have to know? He repeated the words like they were in a foreign language. About my own child. It's not... Lila caught herself. This isn't your problem. I can handle it. Handle it. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 20 degrees. What does that mean exactly? It means I'll figure it out. I always do. Damien moved closer, and despite herself, Lila pressed back in her chair. Not because she was afraid of him, she wasn't, not physically, but because the intensity rolling off him was overwhelming. Let me be very clear about something. he said, voice low and dangerous. I don't abandon my children. I don't walk away from my responsibilities. And I sure as hell don't let the mother of my child figure it out alone. I'm not asking you for anything. I don't care what you're asking for. I'm telling you what's going to happen. He braced his hands on the arms of her chair, leaning down until they were eye to eye. We're going to deal with this together, whether you like it or not. Well, Lila's temper, which she'd kept on a tight leash for the past year of working for this man, finally snapped. You don't get to just decide that. You don't get to swoop in and take over because it fits your narrative or eases your conscience or whatever the hell this is. She stood abruptly, forcing him to step back. I've been taking care of myself my whole life. I don't need rescuing, especially not from someone who thinks every problem can be solved by throwing money at it or issuing commands. That's what you think this is? Something flickered in his eyes. Anger, maybe, or hurt. You think I want to rescue you? I think you want control. It's what you do. But you don't get to control this. You don't get to control me. They stared at each other, both breathing hard. Outside, the city stretched endlessly in every direction, full of people living their normal lives while Lila's reality shifted on its axis. Damien spoke first. What do you want? The question caught her off guard. What? You. Lila Monroe, what do you actually want from this situation? No one ever asked her that. In her entire 30 years, no one had ever just asked what she wanted. I want... She stopped, throat tight. I want my baby to be safe, to have a good life. I want to not lose my job and my apartment and everything I've worked for because I made one mistake. Is that what you think this is? His voice had gentled slightly. A mistake? I don't know what it is. I just know I'm terrified and tired and I can't afford to fall apart right now because if I do, there's no one to catch me. The words hung in the air between them, raw and honest in a way that made Lila want to take them back. She'd revealed too much, shown too much weakness, but Damien didn't pounce on it like she'd expected. Instead, he moved to the wet bar and poured 2 glasses of water, bringing one to her. Sit, he said again, but this time it wasn't a command. Please. Lila sat, took the water, drank because her mouth was desert dry and her hands needed something to do. Damien settled into the chair across from her, and for the first time since she'd met him, he looked uncertain, almost vulnerable. I'm going to tell you something, he said quietly, and I need you to just listen. Can you do that? She nodded. When my wife died 6 years ago, she took most of me with her. Not because I loved her, though I did in my way, but because I failed her, failed both of them. He stared down at his water glass. She had complications, preeclampsia that turned into HELLP syndrome. The doctors said we had to choose, save her or save the baby. They asked me to decide. Lila's chest tightened. I froze. Couldn't make the call. And in those few seconds of hesitation, my wife made it for me. She told them to save Sophia, no matter what. His voice cracked almost imperceptibly. She died 3 hours after our daughter was born. Never even got to hold her. Damien, I swore that day that I would never fail another child, never hesitate, never let fear make me weak. He looked up, meeting her eyes. So when you ask me what I want to be there, for both of you. Not because I'm trying to control you or ease my conscience, but because I already know what it costs to fail, and I won't do it again. The silence that followed was different from before, heavier, full of things neither of them knew how to say. I don't know how to do this, Lila admitted. Any of this. Neither do I. You're a billionaire CEO. You literally control everything. Not this. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. Trust me, I tried to run the numbers this morning, kept coming up with variables I couldn't account for. Despite everything, Lila almost laughed. You tried to make a spreadsheet about this? Old habits. He set down his water glass. Look, I'm not going to pretend this isn't complicated. We work together. We barely know each other. The entire company will have opinions about this. By opinions, you mean they'll assume I slept my way into this job? Probably. He didn't sugarcoat it, which she appreciated, which is why we need to be strategic about how we handle this. And there it was. The Billionaire CEO coming back online, already formulating a plan. What do you have in mind? Lila asked warily. First, you're not resigning. That would just confirm every ugly assumption people want to make. So I stay here? Work for you while pregnant with your baby? That won't raise any eyebrows? Not if we handle it right. Damien leaned forward. Here's what I'm thinking. We keep this quiet for now. You continue in your current role through the end of the quarter. Meanwhile, I talked to some contacts. I don't want charity. It's not charity. It's a career opportunity. He spoke over her protest. There's a position opening up at Meridian Tech, VP of Operations. The CEO owes me a favor. The job is yours if you want it, but you'd have to interview legitimately, prove you can do the work. Lila blinked. VP of Operations? I don't have that kind of experience. You've been running this entire floor for a year. You negotiate with suppliers, manage schedules, coordinate between departments, and you do it better than most executives I've met. He shrugged. The experience is there. You just need the title and the pay grade to match. It was too much, too fast. Her head was spinning. And what happens when people find out about... She gestured vaguely at her still flat stomach. By then, you'll have established yourself somewhere else, on your own merit. What we do in our personal lives is nobody's business. Our personal lives, Lila tested the phrase. Is that what this is? Damien's expression shifted into something she couldn't quite read. That's what I'd like it to be, if you're willing. Willing to what exactly? To let me be involved. To let me support you, financially, emotionally, however you need. He paused. To maybe have dinner with me. Talk about things that don't involve quarterly reports or client meetings. You're asking me on a date. I'm asking you to give me a chance to be more than the asshole boss who got you pregnant and then tried to fix it with business deals. Lila studied him, really looked at him for the first time since that night at the gala. The night she'd convinced herself was just stress relief, just two people who'd had too much champagne and not enough sense. She'd expected to regret it in the morning. She hadn't expected to remember the way he'd looked at her, the way he'd touched her like she mattered, the way he'd fallen asleep with his hand curved protectively over her hip. One dinner, she heard herself say, but not at some fancy restaurant where you'll try to impress me with wine lists I can't pronounce. Where then? Somewhere normal. Somewhere you'd actually go if you weren't trying to make a point. A real smile crossed his face. Small, but genuine. I can do that. And Damien? She held his gaze. I need you to understand something. I'm not doing this because you're rich or because you have connections. I'm doing this because my baby deserves a father who wants to be there. Not because he has to, because he wants to. I want to. Then prove it. The challenge hung between them, sharp and clear. Damien nodded slowly. I will. A knock on the door made them both jump. Damien's assistant, a severe woman named Patricia, who'd been with him for a decade, poked her head in. Mr. Cross, the board meeting starts in 10 minutes. Tell them I'll be late. Patricia's eyebrows rose fractionally, probably the most surprise she'd shown in years, but she nodded and withdrew. You should go, Lila said, standing. I can... Come with me. What? To the meeting. You know the Coleman account better than anyone, and they're going to have questions. He stood as well, straightening his tie. Besides, if we're going to do this, work together, figure out the rest, we need to start acting normal, whatever normal is. He had a point. Hiding would only make things worse. Fine, but you're doing all the talking. I'll just sit there and look competent. Monroe, you always look competent. It's terrifying. She laughed, actually laughed, and some of the crushing tension in her chest eased. They left the private office together, stepping back into the glass and chrome world where Damien Cross was king and Lila Monroe was just another employee. But as they walked toward the conference room, Damien's hand brushed against hers. Brief, almost imperceptible, but intentional. And for the first time in 11 weeks, Lila let herself think that maybe, just maybe, she wasn't in this alone. The board meeting was exactly as boring as Lila had expected, with the added excitement of Jeffrey Coleman trying to renegotiate terms that had been settled months ago. Damien shut him down with the kind of cold precision that had earned him his reputation, and Lila provided the documentation that made arguing pointless. They worked together seamlessly, like they'd been doing this for years instead of walking a knife's edge of professional disaster. When it ended, Damien lingered while the board members filed out, chatting with Harold Chen about some merger in Singapore. Leela gathered her notes, trying not to think about the fact that she'd have to pee again in approximately 15 minutes. The pregnancy book said that would get better in the second trimester. The pregnancy books also said she should be eating better, sleeping more, and avoiding stress. She almost laughed at that last one. Ms. Monroe. Lila looked up to find Jeffrey Coleman standing too close, his cologne overwhelming. He was 60-something, divorced 3 times, and had a reputation for being handsy with younger women. She'd avoided him successfully for the past year. Mr. Coleman, I wanted to say you handled yourself well in there. Most assistants would have crumbled under that kind of pressure. His eyes traveled down her body in a way that made her skin crawl. Damien's lucky to have you. I'm just doing my job. Oh, I'm sure you're very good at your job. The innuendo was clear. Maybe we should have lunch sometime, talk about career opportunities. I'm always looking for talented women to mentor. Lila's stomach turned, though whether from morning sickness or disgust, she couldn't tell. That's very kind, but Coleman. Damien's voice cut through the space between them like a blade. He appeared at Lila's side, not touching her but close enough to make his position clear. We have another meeting, Damien said, tone flat. Monroe, let's go. Jeffrey's smile turned oily. Of course. Wouldn't want to keep the boss waiting. He winked at Lila. My offer stands. Any time. He sauntered out, leaving a trail of expensive cologne and sleaze in his wake. I hate that man, Lila muttered. That makes 2 of us. Damien watched Coleman disappear down the hallway. Has he bothered you before? Nothing I couldn't handle. That's not what I asked, Lila sighed. A couple of comments here and there. I've been avoiding him. Tell me next time. Damien's jaw was tight. I'll handle it. I can handle my own. I know you can, but you shouldn't have to. He looked at her, something fierce in his eyes. Not anymore. The words settled over her like a blanket, warm but slightly suffocating. Lila had spent so long fighting her own battles that the idea of someone else stepping in felt foreign, dangerous even, but also nice. We should get back to work, she said, instead of examining that feeling too closely. About that. Damien gestured toward the elevators. Take the rest of the day off. What? No, I have the Carmichael presentation to finish, which can wait until tomorrow. You look exhausted. Gee, thanks. I didn't mean... He stopped, rubbed his face. I'm trying to be considerate, and apparently I'm terrible at it. Apparently, but she smiled slightly. I'm fine, Damien. I don't need to be handled with kid gloves. How about regular gloves? Or no gloves? I'm running out of metaphors here. How about you just ask me what I need instead of telling me what you think I need? He considered that. Fair enough. What do you need, Lila? Honestly? Saltine crackers and ginger ale. The nausea's been brutal today. Done. Anything else? For you to stop looking at me like I'm going to shatter. Damien's expression softened. Can't promise that, but I'll try. They stood there in the empty conference room, the afternoon sun slanting through the windows and painting everything gold. It felt suspended somehow, this moment between them, before reality came crashing back in. I should go, Lila said finally. Unless you actually do have another meeting? I lied about the meeting. Just wanted Coleman gone. Figured. She gathered her things. So, dinner. When? Tonight? That's fast. I don't see the point in waiting. Do you? Lila thought about the ultrasound image currently sitting on his desk, about the baby growing inside her, his baby, their baby, and all the impossible complications that came with it. No, she admitted. I guess I don't. 7 o'clock, I'll pick you up. You don't know where I live. Damien gave her a look. Lila, I have your HR file. I know where you live. That's not creepy at all. Would you prefer I didn't pick you up? She considered. No, 7's fine. Good. He smiled, really smiled, and it transformed his whole face. Made him look younger, almost boyish. And Lila? Wear something comfortable. I promise, no fancy restaurants. Now I'm nervous. Good, he said again, and this time there was something playful in it. Keeps things interesting. Lila left before she could do something stupid, like kiss him. That night at the gala had been a mistake, or at least that's what she'd been telling herself for 11 weeks. A moment of weakness. Too much champagne and too little sense. But walking out of that conference room, she couldn't quite remember why she'd been so sure it was a mistake. Maybe it wasn't. Maybe it was just the beginning. Lila's apartment was a fifth-floor walk-up in Queens that smelled perpetually of Mrs. Chen's cooking from 5B and had radiators that clanked like someone was murdering pipes every night at 2 a.m. The building had character, her landlord liked to say. Lila called it cheap enough to afford on an assistant's salary, even if that salary came from a billionaire. She stood in front of her closet at 6:30, wearing only a towel and increasing panic. "Wear something comfortable," Damien had said. Which meant what exactly? Jeans seemed too casual for dinner with a man who probably had his suits custom-made in Italy. But a dress felt like she was trying too hard, and the last thing she needed was for him to think she was treating this like some kind of romantic opportunity instead of two people trying to figure out how to co-parent a child they'd accidentally created. Her phone buzzed. A text from Rebecca at work. "Heard you left early. You okay?" Lila stared at the message. Rebecca was nice enough, but she was also the kind of person who loved gossip more than oxygen. If Lila told her anything, even the sanitized version, it would be all over the office by Monday. Just wasn't feeling great. "I'm fine." 3 dots appeared, then disappeared, then appeared again. "Cross seemed weird after you guys met. Everything okay with the Morrison thing?" Of course Rebecca had noticed. Everyone probably noticed. Damien had a terrible poker face when he was actually feeling something, which was rare enough that people paid attention when it happened. "All sorted. See you Monday." She tossed the phone on the bed before Rebecca could ask more questions and grabbed a pair of dark jeans that fit well enough to look intentional and a sweater that was nice but not trying too hard nice. Comfortable. Normal. Like this was a totally ordinary Friday night and not the beginning of whatever complicated disaster her life was becoming. Her phone buzzed again at 6:50. Downstairs. Lila looked out her window and felt her stomach drop. Damien's car, a sleek black Mercedes that probably cost more than her entire year's salary, was idling at the curb, looking absurdly out of place between Mrs. Chen's ancient Honda and a rusted pickup truck that had been parked there since August. She grabbed her coat and bag, checked her reflection one more time, and headed down the 5 flights of stairs because the elevator had been broken for 3 weeks, and the landlord kept promising to fix it next week. Damien was leaning against the car when she emerged, looking unfairly good in dark jeans and a charcoal sweater under his coat. Not the suit. She'd never seen him in anything but a suit, and the casual clothes made him look younger, more approachable, more dangerous. "Hey," she said, suddenly awkward. "Hey." He straightened, opening the passenger door for her. "You look nice." "You look uncomfortable," he laughed. "That obvious?" "Little bit." Lila slid into the car, which smelled like leather and that cologne he wore. The interior was pristine, all smooth surfaces and expensive technology she didn't recognize. "Where are we going?" "You'll see." He closed her door and walked around to the driver's side. They pulled into traffic and Lila watched Queens slide past the window. Bodegas and laundromats, corner restaurants advertising $2 slices, people bundled against the November cold. Her world. Not his. "This is weird, right?" she said after a few blocks of silence. "This is objectively weird." "Extremely weird," Damien agreed. He glanced at her. "Want me to turn around?" "No, maybe, I don't know." Lila rubbed her face. "Sorry, I'm not usually this indecisive. You're pregnant and having dinner with your boss, who's also the father of your baby. I think indecisive is allowed." "When you say it like that, it sounds even more insane." "It is insane." He merged onto the highway. "But that doesn't mean it has to be bad." Lila studied his profile. The strong jaw, the slight crook in his nose that suggested it had been broken once. The way his hands gripped the steering wheel like he was trying to control something that kept slipping away. "Can I ask you something?" she said. "Go ahead." "That night, at the gala. Why me?" Damien was quiet for a long moment. The city lights streaked past, turning everything into motion and color. "You want the honest answer or the one that makes me sound less pathetic?" "Honest." You were the only person at that entire event who looked as miserable as I felt." He smiled slightly. "Everyone else was networking, schmoozing, playing whatever game people play at those things. But you were standing in the corner near the bar, and you had this look on your face like you'd rather be literally anywhere else." "I hate those events." "I know. You made that very clear when I offered you a drink." Lila remembered. She'd been nursing her second glass of champagne, mentally calculating how much longer she had to stay before leaving would be considered rude, when Damien Cross had appeared beside her with 2 fresh glasses and a question that had surprised her. "Having fun?" "About as much fun as a root canal," she'd said before remembering who she was talking to. He'd laughed. Actually laughed. And then he'd said something that had stuck with her. "At least root canals end eventually. These things just keep going." They'd talked for an hour about nothing important: terrible office coffee, the absurdity of networking events, whether pizza was acceptable for breakfast. Normal things. She'd forgotten he was her boss, forgotten he was a billionaire, forgotten everything except that she was talking to someone who actually seemed interested in what she had to say. And then he'd kissed her. Or she'd kissed him. The details got fuzzy after the 3rd glass of champagne, but the result was the same. They'd ended up in his hotel room, and she'd woken up the next morning with his arm around her waist and pure panic in her chest. She'd left before he woke up, caught a cab home. Spent the entire weekend convincing herself it meant nothing, that they'd both just pretend it never happened. Except, apparently, it had consequences. "I thought about calling you," Damien said, pulling her back to the present, "after that night, but I didn't know what to say. Hey, we should probably talk about the fact that we slept together," would have been a start. "Would you have answered?" Lila considered that. "Probably not." "That's what I figured." He took an exit she didn't recognize. "So I told myself it was better to just move on. Keep things professional." "How'd that work out?" "Well, you're pregnant and sitting in my car, so not great." Despite everything, Lila laughed. There was something freeing about acknowledging how spectacularly they'd failed at keeping things simple. They drove for another 20 minutes, leaving the city behind, until Damien pulled into the parking lot of a place called Rosie's. It was a diner, an actual chrome and neon diner that looked like it had been there since the 50s and hadn't changed much since. "This is your idea of dinner?" Lila asked. "You said somewhere normal, somewhere I'd actually go." He shut off the engine. "I come here sometimes, when I need to think, or when I need to remember that not everything in my life costs $1,000. Does Sophia like it?" Damien's expression softened at his daughter's name. "She loves it. Especially the milkshakes. Fair warning, the waitress is going to try to sell you on them. Mary doesn't take no for an answer." They went inside, and the smell of coffee and frying bacon wrapped around Lila like a hug. The place was half full, couples in booths, a group of teenagers laughing too loud in the corner, a lone man at the counter reading a newspaper like it was still 1995. Damien Cross, as I live and breathe. The waitress who appeared was 60-something with gray hair piled on her head and eyes that saw way too much. Her name tag read Mary, and she was already pulling out her order pad. "Hey, Mary." "Don't hey Mary me. You haven't been in here in 3 weeks. I was starting to think you'd forgotten about us little people." Her gaze shifted to Lila, sharp and assessing. "And who's this?" "This is Lila. Lila, Mary." "Girlfriend?" Mary asked bluntly. We're... Damien floundered, and Lila felt a surge of mean satisfaction at seeing him off balance. "We work together," Lila supplied. "Uh-huh." Mary's tone suggested she didn't believe that for a second. "Well, any friend of Damien's gets the good booth. Come on." She led them to a corner booth with cracked red vinyl seats and a view of the parking lot, slapped down 2 menus that had definitely seen better days. "Coffee?" "Just water for me," Lila said quickly. The smell of coffee was making her nauseous again. Mary's eyebrows rose fractionally, but she just nodded. "Water for the lady. And you, Damien, your usual?" "Please." She bustled off, and Damien leaned back in the booth, looking more relaxed than Lila had ever seen him at the office. "She seems nice," Lila said. "She's terrifying. But yeah, nice too." He picked up his menu, though he clearly didn't need it. "The burger's good. So's the meatloaf, if you're into that." "At 7 p.m.? Who eats meatloaf for dinner?" "People with taste?" Lila rolled her eyes but found herself smiling. This was easier than she'd expected. sitting across from him in a diner booth, bickering about meatloaf like normal people instead of boss and employee trying to navigate an impossible situation. Mary returned with their drinks and took their orders. Burger for him, grilled cheese for her because her stomach couldn't handle anything more adventurous. And then they were alone again with nothing but the background noise of the diner and too many unspoken things between them. "So," Damien said, "we should probably talk about the actual situation." "You mean the baby?" "Yeah, that." Lila took a sip of water. "What do you want to know?" "Everything. When you found out, how you've been feeling, what the doctor said." He paused. "If you've been scared." The last question landed differently than the others. Softer, more personal. "Terrified," Lila admitted. "I've been absolutely terrified." "Of what?" "All of it. The pregnancy, the birth, raising a kid alone, losing my job, not being able to afford rent." The words spilled out faster now. "I grew up with nothing, Damien. My mom worked 3 jobs and we still couldn't make ends meet. I swore I'd never end up like that, never put a kid through what I went through. And now I'm going to be a single mother working God knows where, and I can't—" She stopped, realizing she was shaking. Damien reached across the table and took her hand. His palm was warm, solid, real. "You're not going to be alone," he said quietly. "I meant what I said this morning. I'm in this, completely." "You say that now, E. I say it because it's true." His grip tightened slightly. "Look, I know you don't know me that well. You know the CEO version, the guy who fires people before breakfast and runs meetings like military operations. But that's not all I am." "Then who are you?" He was quiet for a moment, his thumb moving absently over her knuckles. "I'm someone who knows what it's like to fail the people who needed me most," he said finally. "And I'm someone who refuses to do it again." "Your wife?" "Caroline." He said her name carefully, like it might break. "We were young when we met. I was 24, just starting out, working 80-hour weeks trying to build something. She was patient about it, said she understood. But I don't think she did. Not really." "You work too much," Lila guessed. "I work constantly, missed dinners, anniversaries, the first ultrasound appointment." His jaw tightened. "When she got pregnant, I told myself I'd change, be more present. But I didn't. I just kept pushing, kept telling myself I was building a future for our family while missing the actual family I was supposed to be building." Mary appeared with their food, set it down with surprising gentleness given how she'd been earlier, and left without a word. Damien didn't touch his burger. "The night she went into labor, I was in Tokyo, closed a deal that would eventually make Cross Industries what it is today. Biggest achievement of my career." He smiled bitterly. "I didn't make it back in time. Didn't get to hold her hand. Didn't get to tell her I was sorry for every time I chose work over her." "Damien, I got back 18 hours later. She was already gone. And Sophia was this tiny, screaming thing in the NICU, and I remember thinking that I had no idea how to do this, how to be enough for her when I'd failed her mother so completely." Lila's throat was tight. "But you did. You raised her." "I'm trying to." He finally looked up and his eyes were haunted. "But every day I wonder if I'm screwing it up. If I'm too cold, too distant, if she'll grow up and realize her dad was more interested in quarterly reports than bedtime stories." "Is that why you work from home 2 days a week?" Lila asked. "Patricia mentioned it once, said you never used to, but now you do." "Sophia's in school 5 days, but those 2 days, I pick her up. We have dinner together. She tells me about her day, and I try to understand why playground drama is apparently life or death important." A real smile crossed his face. "Last week she came home crying because Emma G said Emma K was her new best friend, and Emma L took Emma K's side, and I spent an hour trying to figure out which Emma was which." Lila laughed despite herself. "Sounds exhausting." "It is, but it's also the best part of my week." His expression sobered. "That's what I want you to understand. I'm not trying to take over your life or control this situation. I'm just asking for a chance to not screw up twice." The honesty in his voice was almost painful. Lila had spent so long thinking of Damien Cross as this untouchable figure, brilliant, powerful, utterly self-contained. But sitting across from him now, watching him pick at his burger while talking about playground politics and dead wives, she saw someone different, Someone human. Someone scared. Someone a lot like her. Okay, she said. Okay? Okay, you get a chance. We do this together. Figure it out as we go. She paused. But I need you to promise me something. Anything. Don't make promises you can't keep. Don't tell me you'll be there and then disappear when work gets busy or it gets hard or you realize this is way more complicated than you thought. She met his eyes. Because I can handle a lot of things, but I can't handle someone who makes me believe I'm not alone and then proves I was better off by myself. Damien set down his burger, giving her his full attention. I promise I will screw up, he said seriously. I'll probably miss appointments or say the wrong thing or make decisions you hate, but I also promise I won't disappear, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. How do I know you mean it? You don't. Not yet. He shrugged. But I'm asking you to give me time to prove it. It wasn't a perfect answer, but it was honest, which was more than most people offered. Eat your burger, Lila said. It's getting cold. They ate in silence for a few minutes, the comfortable kind that came when words had been said and didn't need to be repeated. Lila's grilled cheese was exactly what her stomach needed. Simple, warm, not trying to be anything fancy. Can I ask you something now? Damien said. Fair's fair? That night? Did you regret it? Lila considered lying. It would be easier, but they were past easy now. I thought I did, she said slowly. The next morning, I was horrified. Thought I'd ruined everything, crossed a line I couldn't uncross. Spent 2 weeks convinced you'd fire me. I wouldn't have... I know that now, but then, I didn't know anything except that I'd slept with my boss and probably destroyed my career. But you don't think that anymore? I think it's more complicated than regret. She picked at her sandwich. I think we made a choice that had consequences neither of us expected. And now we're dealing with those consequences. That's not the same as regret. Do you wish it hadn't happened? The question hung between them, heavier than it should be. Sometimes, Lila admitted, when I'm throwing up at 3 a.m. or panicking about money or imagining all the ways this could go wrong, yeah, I wish it hadn't happened. Damien's expression shuddered slightly. But other times, she continued, when I think about the fact that I'm going to have a baby, someone who's half me and half you, I can't quite manage to wish it away. Does that make sense? Yeah, he said quietly. It does. They finished eating while Mary bustled around, refilling coffee cups and chatting with the regulars. The teenagers in the corner left, and a couple came in, holding hands and looking at each other like they were the only two people in the world. Lila wondered if she and Damien would ever look at each other like that. If this thing between them could ever be something beyond two people bound together by biology and responsibility. I should tell you about the job offer, Damien said, pulling her from her thoughts. At Meridian. You were serious about that? Completely. I talked to Marcus Chen this afternoon. He's the CEO. Told him I had someone exceptional who was looking for a bigger opportunity. You didn't mention that you're pregnant? No. That's your information to share when and if you choose. He finished his burger. The interview is Monday if you want it, but if you don't, that's fine too. This isn't conditional on you taking the job. What is it conditional on? Nothing. That's the point. Damien met her eyes. I'm going to support you in this baby regardless of whether you take that job, stay at Cross Industries, or decide to do something else entirely. Your career is yours. This, us figuring out how to be parents together, that's separate. It was the right thing to say. The respectful thing. But part of Lila still wanted to push back, to find the catch, because in her experience, nothing came without strings attached. Why? She asked. Why what? Why are you being so decent about this? Most men in your position would throw money at the problem and disappear. I'm not most men, clearly, but that's not an answer. Damien leaned back in the booth, considering. When Sophia was born, he said finally, and Caroline was gone, I had a choice. I could hire the best nannies money could buy, set up trust funds, make sure she had every material thing she could ever need, and basically purchase my way out of actually being a father. But you didn't. No, because I realized that all the money in the world wouldn't matter if she grew up without a parent who actually gave a damn, who showed up, who tried. He paused. I'm not perfect at it. Some days I'm terrible at it, but I show up. And I'm going to show up for this baby too. For you too, if you'll let me. Mary returned with the check, which Damien paid despite Lila's half-hearted protest. As they stood to leave, Mary caught Lila's arm. You seem like a smart girl, she said quietly, too low for Damien to hear. So I'm going to tell you something. That man right there, he's one of the good ones. Doesn't happen often, so when you find it, you hold on. Lila didn't know what to say to that, so she just nodded. They drove back toward the city in comfortable silence, the radio playing something soft and forgettable. Lila watched the lights blur past and thought about everything that had been said and everything that hadn't. I'll do the interview, she said suddenly. Damien glanced at her. You sure? No, but I don't think I'm supposed to be sure about anything right now. Fair enough. When they reached her building, Damien insisted on walking her up despite her protests about the 5 flights of stairs. He was slightly winded by the time they reached her door, which she found oddly satisfying. Billionaires don't do stairs? She teased. Billionaires have elevators. He leaned against the wall, catching his breath. Though I'm thinking about investing in a gym membership after that. Lila unlocked her door, but didn't open it yet. Thank you for dinner, for listening, for not being an ass about all of this. Low bar, but I'll take it. He straightened. Can I ask one more thing? Sure. The next doctor's appointment. Can I come? The request caught her off guard. You want to come to an OB appointment? If that's okay. I missed all of Caroline's. I don't want to miss yours. There was something in his voice, vulnerability maybe, or hope, that made it impossible to say no. It's Tuesday at 2, she heard herself say. Doctor, Patel's office in Midtown. I'll be there, he smiled. Should I bring anything? Do anything? I have no idea how this works. Just show up, that's enough. They stood there in the hallway for a moment, too close and not close enough, and Lila felt that same pull she'd felt at the gala, the one that had led to a hotel room and changed everything. Damien seemed to feel it too. His eyes dropped to her lips, then back up. I should go, he said, voice rough. Yeah, you should. But neither of them moved. Lila, whatever he was going to say was interrupted by Mrs. Chen's door opening 3 floors down and her voice echoing up the stairwell. Lila, you home? I make too much lo mein again. The moment broke. Damien stepped back and Lila exhaled. Tuesday, she said, 2 p.m. I'll be there. He left, and Lila went inside, closing the door and leaning against it. Her apartment seemed smaller somehow, emptier. She could still smell his cologne on her clothes. Her phone buzzed, a text from Damien, made it back to the car, only slightly dead from the stairs. She smiled despite herself. Told you to use the elevator. It's broken, remember? Oh, right. Guess you'll just have to suffer. 3 dots appeared. Worth it. Lila stared at those 2 words for longer than was probably healthy, then set her phone down and went to rescue whatever lo mein Mrs. Chen had made too much of. Tuesday couldn't come fast enough, or maybe it could come a lot slower. She honestly didn't know which she preferred anymore. The weekend passed in a blur of overthinking and Mrs. Chen's endless supply of home-cooked food. By Monday morning, Lila was equal parts nervous about the interview at Meridian Tech and desperate to focus on something that wasn't the growing list of impossible questions in her head. She wore her best suit, navy blue, tailored enough to look professional without screaming that she'd spent 3 months' rent on it, and took the subway to Meridian's offices in Lower Manhattan. The building was newer than Cross Industries, all glass and steel, with an open lobby that tried too hard to look innovative. Marcus Chen's assistant met her at reception. The woman was younger than Lila, dressed in the kind of casual but expensive clothes that tech companies loved, and she smiled with the practiced warmth of someone who'd been trained to make visitors feel welcome. Ms. Monroe, I'm Ashley. Marcus is running just a few minutes behind, but he'll be ready for you shortly. Can I get you anything? Water? Coffee? Water's fine, thank you. Ashley led her to a waiting area with uncomfortable modern furniture and a view of the street below. Lila sat, crossed her legs, uncrossed them, then crossed them again. Her stomach was doing flips, though whether from nerves or morning sickness, she couldn't tell. Her phone buzzed. You've got this. Damien. Of course. Easy for you to say. You're not the one interviewing. True, but I am the one who told Marcus you were the best person he'd meet all year. Don't make me a liar. No pressure then. You don't need pressure. You need to remember that you're exceptional at what you do. Lila stared at the message, something warm unfurling in her chest. She'd spent so long fighting for scraps, convincing herself she was lucky to have any job at all, that the idea of being exceptional felt foreign. Ms. Monroe? Ashley was back, gesturing toward a conference room. Marcus is ready for you. Marcus Chen was 50-something with salt and pepper hair and the kind of easy confidence that came from building a successful company without losing his soul in the process. He stood when Lila entered, shaking her hand with a firm grip. Lila, thanks for coming in. Damien's told me a lot about you. Hopefully good things, Lila said, settling into the chair across from him. Nothing but. Marcus sat, leaning back in his chair. Though, I'll be honest, when he called asking me to interview someone, I almost said no. Damien doesn't usually get involved in other people's hiring processes. He must think pretty highly of you. We've worked together for about a year now, and in that year, you've apparently kept his entire executive floor running smoothly, negotiated several major contracts, and managed to not quit despite Damien's reputation for being, shall we say, exacting. That's one word for it. Marcus laughed. I've known Damien for 15 years. Exacting is the polite version. But he's also one of the smartest people I know, and if he says you're worth my time, I'm inclined to believe him. They spent the next hour talking through Lila's experience, her approach to problem solving, how she handled difficult personalities and tight deadlines. Marcus asked smart questions, not the rehearsed corporate nonsense she'd expected, but real questions about how she thought, what drove her, where she wanted to be in 5 years. That last one almost made her laugh. 5 years ago, she'd wanted to not be living paycheck to paycheck. Now she was sitting in an interview for a VP position while pregnant with her billionaire boss's baby. Planning 5 years ahead felt like a joke. I want to build something, she said instead, not just maintain it. I'm good at keeping things running, but I want to be part of creating systems, solving problems before they become crises. Making things better instead of just making sure they don't fall apart. Marcus nodded slowly. That's what we need here. Meridian's growing fast, maybe too fast. We need someone who can come in and build operational infrastructure that can scale with us. Someone who's not afraid to tell me when we're about to drive off a cliff. I'm very good at telling people when they're about to drive off cliffs. Damien mentioned that too. Marcus smiled. Look, I'm going to be straight with you. This job is going to be intense, long hours, especially in the first 6 months while you're getting systems in place. The team is young, hungry, and sometimes thinks they're smarter than they are. You'd be coming in as the adult in the room, and not everyone's going to like that. I can handle intense, and I'm used to people not liking me. Good, because if this works out, I need someone who's going to push back when I'm being an idiot. Can you do that? Lila thought about the past year of working for Damien Cross, of all the times she'd had to find diplomatic ways to tell a billionaire he was wrong. Yeah, she said, I can do that. They talked for another 30 minutes about specifics, team structure, current challenges, the technology stack they were using. Lila took notes, asked questions, and felt something she hadn't felt in a long time. Excitement. Real, genuine excitement about work. When the interview ended, Marcus walked her to the elevator himself. I've got 2 more candidates to see this week, but between you and me, they're formalities. The job's yours if you want it. He extended his hand. I'll send over an official offer by Wednesday. Take some time to think about it. I don't need time, Lila heard herself say. Yes, I want it. Marcus's smile widened. Excellent. Welcome to Meridian, Lila. She floated out of the building in a daze, barely registering the cold November air or the crowds of people rushing past. By the time she made it to the subway, her phone was already buzzing with a call from Damien. Well? You told him to offer me the job, didn't you? I told him to interview you. What happened after that was all you. A pause. So? How'd it go? I got it. I actually got it. Lila laughed, the sound slightly unhinged even to her own ears. VP of Operations. I'm going to be a VP, Damien. I told you. His voice was warm, pleased. Congratulations. I can't believe this is real. Believe it. You earned it. Lila leaned against the subway platform wall, letting the reality sink in. 6 months ago, she'd been temping at a law firm, praying someone would hire her full-time. Now she was going to be a vice president at a tech company while pregnant with a baby she hadn't planned. Her life was insane. "Thank you," she said quietly, "for setting this up, for believing I could do it. Don't thank me. Just promise you'll make Marcus regret not giving you an even bigger title. Deal." They talked for a few more minutes before Damien had to jump on a call with Tokyo. Lila hung up and took the train back to Queens, watching the city blur past and trying to process everything that had happened in the span of a week. She was still processing when she got home and found a package waiting outside her door. No return address, but her name was written in neat black marker on the plain brown box. Inside were 3 things: a bottle of prenatal vitamins, a package of ginger candies, and a note in handwriting she recognized from the few times she'd seen Damien write things by hand. Read that ginger helps with nausea. Figured it was worth a try. "See you tomorrow." Lila sat on her couch with the box in her lap and felt something dangerous happening in her chest. Something that felt suspiciously like hope. Tuesday afternoon found her in Dr. Patel's waiting room, flipping through a magazine she wasn't reading while trying not to think about the fact that Damien was supposed to meet her here in 10 minutes. What if he didn't show up? What if something came up at work, some crisis that needed his attention more than a routine doctor's appointment? What if he'd had time to think about everything and decided it was too much, too complicated, The waiting room door opened. Damien walked in wearing a suit but no tie, his hair slightly disheveled like he'd been running his hands through it. He spotted her immediately, and the tension in his shoulders eased. "Sorry I'm late. Meeting ran over." "You're not late. I'm early." He sat beside her, close enough that their shoulders almost touched. "How are you feeling?" "Nervous." "Me too." That admission surprised her. "Why are you nervous?" "Because I have no idea what to expect, and because—" He trailed off, looking uncomfortable. "Because what?" "Because this makes it real. More real than the ultrasound or the conversation or any of it." His voice was quiet. "We're going to see our baby, hear the heartbeat, and after that, I don't think I'll be able to pretend this is anything other than the most important thing that's ever happened to me." Lila's throat tightened. Before she could respond, a nurse called her name, Doctor. Patel was a woman in her 40s with kind eyes and a no-nonsense manner that Lila appreciated. She shook Damien's hand when Lila introduced him as the baby's father, and if she had any thoughts about their situation, she kept them to herself. "All right, Lila, let's take a look." Dr. Patel set up the ultrasound machine. "This will be cold." The gel hit Lila's stomach, and she flinched. Damien's hand found hers, his grip tight. "Doctor." Patel moved the wand, eyes on the screen, and for a few terrifying seconds, there was nothing but static and shadows. Lila's heart hammered against her ribs. Then Dr. Patel smiled. "There we are." The sound filled the room, fast, rhythmic, like a tiny drum racing ahead of itself. "That's the heartbeat," Dr. Patel said. "Strong and healthy." Lila stared at the screen, at the small shape that barely looked like anything recognizable, and felt tears prick her eyes. Beside her, Damien had gone very still. "Everything looks good," Dr. Patel continued, moving the wand slightly. "Development is right on track for 12 weeks. You should start feeling better soon as you move into the 2nd trimester." She kept talking, pointing out details on the screen, explaining what to expect in the coming weeks. But Lila barely heard her. She was too focused on that sound, that impossible, beautiful sound of a life that hadn't existed 3 months ago. "Wait, Doctor." Patel's voice changed, became more focused. She moved the wand again, adjusted something on the screen. Lila's stomach dropped. "What? What's wrong?" "Nothing's wrong." Dr. Patel's expression was unreadable. "But I'm seeing something interesting here." She adjusted the screen angle, and Lila watched her eyes move back and forth like she was confirming something. "See this here?" Dr. Patel pointed to the screen. "And this here?" 2 shapes. 2 distinct shapes where there should have been one. "I don't understand," Lila said. "You're having twins." The words landed like a bomb in the small exam room. Lila's brain stuttered to a halt. Twins. 2 babies. Not one impossible situation, but 2. Are you sure? Damien's voice sounded strangled. Absolutely sure, see? 2 separate heartbeats, 2 separate sacs. Fraternal twins, looks like. Dr. Patel smiled. Congratulations. You're going to have your hands full. Lila couldn't breathe. The room felt too small, too hot, too everything. Twins. How was she supposed to handle twins? She could barely wrap her head around 1 baby, and now there were 2? She sat up abruptly, pulling her shirt down. I need a minute. Of course. Take your time. Dr. Patel handed her tissues, then diplomatically excused herself to give them privacy. The moment the door closed, Lila started laughing. Hysterical, unhinged laughter that quickly turned into sobs. Hey, hey! Damien was there, kneeling in front of her, hands on her knees. Breathe, just breathe. Twins, Damien, twins. How am I supposed to? She couldn't finish the sentence, couldn't articulate the overwhelming panic surging through her. We'll figure it out. How? How are we going to figure out 2 babies? I don't. She was spiraling. She knew she was spiraling, but she couldn't stop. All her carefully constructed plans were disintegrating. The small apartment that might have worked for 1 baby would never fit 2. The savings she'd been desperately trying to build would disappear twice as fast. Everything was twice as impossible now. Lila, look at me. She forced herself to meet his eyes. We're going to figure it out, he said again, slower this time. Together. I know this is scary. Trust me, I'm scared too, but we're not doing this alone. You keep saying that, but what? You don't believe me? His jaw tightened. What do I have to do to prove I'm not going anywhere? I don't know. I don't know what I believe right now because everything is happening too fast and I can't. She pressed her hands to her face. I need time. I need to think. Damien stood, running a hand through his hair in frustration. Fine. Take time. Think. But while you're thinking, remember that I'm still going to be here. Whether it's 1 baby or 2 or 10, I'm still going to be here. You can't promise that. Yes, I can. And I am. He grabbed his coat. I'm going to give you space because that's what you asked for. But I'll be at your apartment tonight at 7 with dinner. And we're going to talk about this like adults instead of you assuming I'm going to bail at the first sign of things getting complicated. He left before she could respond, the door clicking shut behind him with devastating finality. Lila sat alone in the exam room, staring at the ultrasound machine's blank screen, and wondered how everything had gone from impossible to catastrophic in the span of 5 minutes. By the time she made it home, she'd cried twice on the subway, and once in the bodega when Mr. Martinez asked if she was okay. And she couldn't figure out how to answer. Her apartment felt like a trap when she walked in. Too small, too shabby, too completely inadequate for the life she was supposed to be building. She sat on her couch and pulled out her phone, scrolling through pregnancy forums she'd been lurking on for weeks. Found a thread about unexpected twins. Read horror stories about double the diapers, double the sleepless nights, double the everything. Then she found a comment that stopped her scrolling. Yeah, it's terrifying. But it's also kind of amazing, like your kid automatically gets a best friend built in. And watching them figure out they're not alone in the world, that there's someone who's been with them since before they even knew what alone meant. That's something special. Lila read it 3 times, then closed her phone and let herself cry properly. Not panicked crying this time, but the kind of crying that came from release, from letting go of the control she'd been clutching so desperately. She was still crying when someone knocked on her door at exactly 7 p.m. Damien stood in the hallway holding bags from the Thai place 2 blocks over and looking uncertain in a way she'd never seen him look. I brought pad Thai, he said, and those spring rolls you mentioned liking, and mango sticky rice because I figured you could use dessert. Lila stepped aside to let him in. He set the food on her tiny kitchen counter, moving carefully in the cramped space like he was afraid of breaking something. Neither of them spoke for a long moment. I'm sorry, Lila said finally, for freaking out, for assuming you'd leave, for being a mess. You're allowed to be a mess. You just found out you're having twins. We found out we're having twins. Yeah, Damien smiled slightly. We did. He started unpacking the food, and Lila moved to help him, their movements awkward in the small kitchen. She didn't have real plates, just the mismatched set she'd accumulated from thrift stores, and she felt a flash of embarrassment as she set them out. "This is nothing like your place, is it?" she said. "My place is cold and empty most of the time. This—" he gestured around the apartment. "This feels like someone actually lives here." They ate sitting on her couch because her kitchen table was currently holding a broken lamp she'd been meaning to fix for 3 months. The pad thai was good, and the spring rolls were better, and for a few minutes they just existed in companionable silence. "I've been thinking," Damien said eventually, "about what happens next. What happens next is I start my new job and try not to throw up in any important meetings. I meant with us. With the babies." Lila set down her fork. "Okay. My house is big. Too big for just me and Sophia. There's a whole wing I don't even use." He wasn't looking at her, focusing instead on his food like it held the secrets of the universe. "You could move in. Not with me," he added quickly. "You'd have your own space, privacy, but you'd be there, and when the babies come, we'd both be there. It would be easier." The offer hung in the air between them, tempting and terrifying in equal measure. "Damien, I can't." "Why not?" "Because it's too much. Because people would talk. Because you're scared," he finished. "Of what? That I'll turn out to be an asshole? That this won't work? What?" "All of it," Lila admitted. "I'm scared of all of it." "Me too." He finally looked at her. "But I'm more scared of you struggling alone in this apartment that doesn't have heat half the time and has 5 flights of stairs you'll have to climb when you're 8 months pregnant with twins. The stairs build character. The stairs are going to kill you." He reached over, taking her hand. "I'm not asking you to marry me or commit to anything beyond letting me help. Just think about it, please." Lila looked down at their joined hands. His were larger, rougher, despite his wealth. Working hands, even though most of his work happened behind a desk. "I'll think about it," she said. "That's all I'm asking." They finished eating while some terrible reality show played on Lila's ancient TV. Damien made fun of the contestants, and Lila defended them. And somewhere in the middle of arguing about whether someone named Brad was actually a villain or just misunderstood, she realized she was happy, genuinely, impossibly happy despite everything. "Tell me about Caroline," she said during a commercial break. Damien tensed. "Why?" "Because you loved her. Because she's Sophia's mother. Because if we're going to do this, raise kids together, I should know about her." He was quiet for so long Lila thought he might not answer. Then he started talking. "We met at a charity event. She was there with her parents, old money, the kind of people who wore their wealth like armor. I was the upstart businessman her mother disapproved of." He smiled slightly. "She liked that. Liked that I made her parents uncomfortable." "Sounds like a great foundation for a relationship." "It wasn't, not really. We got married because it's what people did. Because we looked good together on paper." He stared at the TV without seeing it. "I think we could have been happy if I'd been different. If I'd been capable of being the husband she needed instead of the one I was." "What kind of husband were you?" "Absent. Obsessed with building something instead of appreciating what I already had." His voice went rough. "She used to leave me notes. Little things, like movie tonight or dinner at 7. And I'd find them 3 days later when I finally came home long enough to check the mail." That must have hurt her. It killed her. The words were blunt, brutal. Not literally, but it killed what we could have been. By the time she got pregnant, we were more like roommates than spouses. And I told myself I'd fix it after the baby came. After I closed one more deal, landed one more client, after. But after never came. No, it didn't. Damien rubbed his face. "I don't talk about her much. It's easier not to. But Sophia asks sometimes, wants to know what her mother was like. And I tell her the good parts. The way Caroline laughed at terrible jokes, how she loved old movies, the fact that she played piano even though she was terrible at it." "Does Sophia remember her at all?" "No, she was too young." He looked at Lila. "But she knows her mother loved her, made sure she was born even when it cost everything. That's what I tell her when she asks why she doesn't have a mom like other kids." Lila's chest ached. "You're a good father, Damien. I'm trying to be. Some days I think I'm failing spectacularly. Join the club. I'm already convinced I'm going to screw up these kids before they're even born." Then we'll screw them up together. He squeezed her hand. At least they'll have consistency. They sat like that for a while, hands intertwined, watching the terrible reality show and not talking about the enormous decisions looming ahead of them. Eventually, Damien stood to leave. Think about the house, he said at the door. No pressure. Just think about it. I will. He hesitated, like he wanted to say something else, then just nodded and left. Lila locked the door behind him and leaned against it, listening to his footsteps fade down the stairwell. Her apartment was quiet except for Mrs. Chen's TV through the wall and the radiator starting its nightly clanking. She walked to her bedroom and looked at the space she'd carved out for herself in this city. It wasn't much. A bed, a dresser she'd painted herself, curtains from Target, but it was hers. The first place that had ever been fully, completely hers. Could she give that up? Move into Damien Cross's house and let him take care of her? Her phone buzzed. A text from her mother, who she hadn't spoken to in 6 months. Heard you got a new job. Good for you. Maybe you can finally help with your brother's tuition. Lila stared at the message, then deleted it without responding. Some things never changed. Her mother would always see her as a source of money. Her brother would always be the favorite, and she would always be the one expected to sacrifice. But maybe that didn't have to be true anymore. She looked around her apartment one more time, then picked up her phone and texted Damien. About the house. Can I see it first before I decide? The reply came 30 seconds later. Anytime you want. Tomorrow? Tomorrow works. I'll pick you up at 10. Fair warning, Sophia will probably be there. She's not in school. Lila's stomach flipped. Meeting his daughter felt significant somehow, like crossing a line they couldn't uncross. That's fine. I'd like to meet her. She's going to ask you a million questions, just so you know. I can handle a 6-year-old. That's what everyone thinks. Then they meet Sophie. Lila smiled and set down her phone. Tomorrow she'd meet Damien's daughter and see the house and make decisions that felt too big for her to handle. But tonight, she'd just sit in her small apartment and let herself imagine what it might be like to not do everything alone. To have someone catch her when she fell. To believe that maybe, just maybe, this impossible situation could turn into something good. Damien's house wasn't a house. It was an estate. Lila stared through the car window as they pulled through iron gates that opened automatically, past manicured lawns and trees that probably cost more than her entire annual salary. The main building was stone and glass, modern but somehow timeless, the kind of place that appeared in architecture magazines under headlines like Understated Elegance or Contemporary Luxury. You live here, she said flatly. I know it's a lot. A lot? Damien, this place has a gate, an actual gate with a security code. For safety, Sophia's safety mostly, he pulled into a circular driveway. It's not as pretentious inside, I promise. That's a really low bar you're setting. He parked and came around to open her door, which still felt weird even after he'd done it 3 times now. Lila climbed out, her sneakers crunching on gravel that was probably imported from some exclusive quarry in France or whatever rich people did with their driveways. The front door opened before they reached it, and a woman in her 60s appeared. She wore casual clothes, jeans, and a sweater, but carried herself with the kind of quiet authority that suggested she ran this place with military precision. Lila, this is Margaret. She helps manage the house and keeps me from burning down the kitchen. Damien smiled at the older woman. Margaret, this is Lila Monroe. A pleasure, dear. Margaret's handshake was firm, her eyes assessing but not unkind. Mr. Cross mentioned you might be visiting. Can I get you anything? Tea? Coffee? Just water would be great, thank you. Margaret disappeared into the house, and Damien led Lila inside. The foyer alone was bigger than her entire apartment, all high ceilings and clean lines. Original artwork hung on the walls, actual paintings, not prints, and everything was perfectly arranged in that way that suggested either an interior designer or someone with way too much time on their hands. This is insane, Lila muttered. I'll show you the wing I mentioned. It's quieter, more private. Damien guided her through a living room that looked like it had never been lived in, down a hallway lined with more art. This part of the house was supposed to be for guests, but I almost never have people stay over. It's just been sitting empty. He opened a door at the end of the hall, and Lila stepped into what could only be described as an apartment within the house. There was a bedroom with an attached bathroom, a small sitting room, even a kitchenette. You've got your own entrance here, too. Damien pointed to a door she hadn't noticed. Leads out to the side garden. You could come and go without going through the main house if you wanted. Lila walked through the space, running her hand along the back of a couch that was nicer than any furniture she'd ever owned. The windows overlooked a garden that was probably beautiful when it wasn't November, and beyond that, trees that offered privacy from whatever wealthy neighbors lived nearby. There's another bedroom here, too. Damien opened a second door. Could be for the babies or a nursery, whatever you need. The room was empty now, just hardwood floors and afternoon light, but Lila could picture it filled with cribs and changing tables and all the things two babies would require. Could picture herself living here in this impossible space that felt like something from a dream. I can't afford this, she said quietly. I'm not asking you to afford it. I'm offering it. Damien, before you argue, just think about it practically. He leaned against the door frame. You'll need space for two babies. Equipment, furniture, room to breathe. Your apartment barely fits you. This place is just sitting here empty. And what do I tell people? That I moved into my boss's house? You tell them I'm the father of your children and we're trying to make co-parenting work, which is true. His voice was calm, reasonable. Or you don't tell them anything. It's nobody's business but ours. Lila walked to the window, staring out at the garden. This feels like charity. It's not charity. It's me trying to be practical about a situation that's already complicated enough. He came to stand beside her. You're going to need help, Lila. Real help. Not just money or good intentions. Actual physical presence when you're up at 3 a.m. with two screaming infants and you can't remember the last time you slept. And you're going to be that help? I'm going to try. And it'll be a lot easier if we're under the same roof instead of you in Queens and me out here. He had a point. Multiple points, actually, but accepting felt like admitting she couldn't do this alone, and Lila had been doing things alone for so long that she didn't know how to be any other way. Can I think about it? She asked. For real this time? Not just saying I'll think about it to end the conversation? Of course. Damien checked his watch. Sophie should be finishing her piano lesson soon. Want to meet her? Lila's stomach clenched. Now? Unless you'd rather wait. No, She took a breath. Now is fine. I'm just nervous. Don't be. She's 6. The worst she can do is ask you uncomfortable questions and judge your taste in cartoons. That's supposed to make me feel better? Not really, no. They walked back through the house to what Damien called the music room, though Lila would have called it a full concert hall. A grand piano sat in the center, and at it sat a small girl with dark curls and her father's gray eyes, concentrating fiercely on the keys while an older woman in a cardigan offered gentle corrections. That's it, Sophia. Nice and steady on the tempo. The girl, Sophie, played a few more measures before noticing them in the doorway. Her face lit up when she saw Damien. Daddy! She abandoned the piano and ran to him, and Damien scooped her up like she weighed nothing. Hey, princess. How's the lesson going? Mrs. Patterson says I'm getting better at the hard parts. Sophie beamed, then noticed Lila. Who's that? This is Lila. She's a friend of mine. Damien set Sophie down. Lila, this is my daughter Sophia. You can call me Sophie. Only Mrs. Patterson calls me Sophia when I'm in trouble. The girl studied Lila with unsettling intensity. Are you Daddy's girlfriend? Lila floundered. We work together, Damien said smoothly. And we're friends. Oh. Sophie looked disappointed. Emma Kay says her dad got a girlfriend and now she has to share her room with a baby. I don't want to share my room. You won't have to share your room, Damien assured her. I promise. Mrs. Patterson gathered her things and excused herself, leaving the 3 of them in the music room. Sophie climbed back onto the piano bench and patted the space beside her. Do you play piano? She asked Lila. Not really. I took lessons when I was little, but I wasn't very good. I'm not very good either, but Daddy says if I practice, I'll get better. Sophie started picking out a simple melody. Do you like music? Sure. Who doesn't like music? Emma L. doesn't. She says piano is boring, but Emma L. is wrong about a lot of things. Sophie played a few more notes. Daddy says you're really smart. Are you? Lila glanced at Damien, who looked amused. I don't know. I try to be. What's 200 plus 300? 500. What's 500 plus 1,000? 1,500. Sophie's eyes widened. You are smart. Emma G can't even do math without counting on her fingers. Math gets easier with practice, like piano. Everything's practice. Sophie sighed dramatically. That's what all the grown-ups say. Practice, practice, practice. It's so boring. Tell me about it, Lila said, and Sophie giggled. They spent the next 20 minutes with Sophie, alternating between playing piano, asking Lila increasingly random questions, and providing detailed updates on the complex social dynamics of first grade. Lila learned more about the various Emmas than she ever needed to know, heard about Sophie's best friend Marcus, who apparently ate paste, and discovered that 6-year-olds had very strong opinions about which Disney princess was superior. Damien watched them with an expression Lila couldn't quite read, something soft and almost hopeful. Eventually, Margaret appeared to collect Sophie for lunch. The girl hugged her father, then surprised Lila by hugging her too. I like you, Sophie announced. You should come over more. We'll see, Lila said, throat suddenly tight. After Sophie left, Damien led Lila to a den that actually looked lived in, comfortable furniture, books scattered around, a forgotten tablet on the coffee table. She liked you, he said. She's 6. She likes everyone. No, she doesn't. She told her grandmother's new boyfriend that he had stupid hair and shouldn't come back. Damien smiled. Sophie's pretty good at reading people. Great. No pressure then. I'm not trying to pressure you. He stopped, ran a hand through his hair. I want this to work, Lila. All of it. You living here, us figuring out how to parent together, Sophie getting used to the idea of siblings. I want it to work so badly it scares me. The honesty in his voice caught her off guard. Lila sank onto the couch, and Damien sat beside her, close, but not touching. What if it doesn't work? She asked quietly. What if we try this and it's a disaster? Then it's a disaster and we figure out plan B, but at least we tried. I'm not used to people sticking around when things get hard. I know. He turned to face her. But I'm not people, I'm me, and I'm asking you to give me a chance to prove that. Lila looked at him, really looked at him. Saw the worry in his eyes, the tension in his shoulders, the way his hands gripped his knees like he was trying to hold himself together. This terrified him as much as it terrified her. Okay, she heard herself say. Okay? Okay, I'll move in. On a trial basis. If it doesn't work, if it's too weird or complicated or whatever, I reserve the right to leave. Done. Damien's whole body relaxed. When? I need to give notice on my apartment. Pack. Maybe 2 weeks? I can have movers handle the packing if you want. Make it easier. I can pack my own stuff, Damien. I'm not helpless. I know you're not. I'm just trying to help. I know, and I appreciate it. But let me do this part myself, okay? She softened her tone. I need to feel like I'm contributing something instead of just letting you fix everything. He nodded. Fair enough. But if you change your mind about the movers, the offer stands. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, the weight of the decision settling over both of them. Lila thought about her apartment in Queens, about Mrs. Chen and the broken elevator and the radiator that clanked. Thought about leaving the first place that had ever been truly hers. But she also thought about waking up at 3 a.m. with twins and no help. About trying to navigate 2 babies in a 5th-floor walk-up. About doing everything alone because she was too proud to accept help when it was offered. I'm scared, she admitted. Me too. What if I'm a terrible mother? You won't be. You don't know that. I know you're asking the question, which already makes you better than half the parents out there. Damien shifted closer. And I know you care enough to be scared. That counts for something. Lila leaned back against the couch, exhausted suddenly. The past week had been a marathon of impossible decisions and life-changing revelations, and she was running on fumes. When do I start at Meridian, she asked. January 2nd. Gives you the holidays to transition out of Cross Industries and take a break before jumping into the new role. A break, right? Because I'll have so much free time preparing to move and dealing with first trimester exhaustion and figuring out how to tell my mother I'm pregnant. You haven't told your mother? We're not close. She's going to have opinions, none of them good. Lila closed her eyes. She'll probably ask if you're going to marry me. Make sure the babies have legitimacy or whatever outdated concept she's clinging to. Would that be so terrible? Lila's eyes snapped open. What? Marriage. Would it be terrible? Damien's expression was carefully neutral. I'm not proposing. I'm just asking. We barely know each other, Damien. We know each other well enough to be having twins. That's biology, not compatibility. Fair point. He was quiet for a moment. But maybe we could get to know each other better. Real dates, not just crisis management conversations. Figure out if there's something here beyond co-parenting. Lila's heart did something complicated in her chest. You want to date me? I want to not look back in 5 years and wonder what could have happened if we'd actually tried. He met her eyes. I'm attracted to you. I like talking to you. And that night at the gala wasn't just alcohol and bad decisions for me. Was it for you? She thought about that night, about the way he'd looked at her like she mattered, the way he'd kissed her like he was memorizing the shape of her mouth, the way he'd held her after, his heartbeat steady under her ear while the city glittered outside the hotel window. No, she admitted. It wasn't just alcohol. So maybe we could try. See where it goes. While living in the same house and preparing for twins. No pressure. When you say it like that, it sounds insane. It is insane, Damien. Everything about this is insane. I know. He smiled slightly. But maybe that's okay. Before Lila could respond, her phone rang. She glanced at the screen and felt her stomach drop. Her mother. I should take this, she said, standing. Want privacy? Please. Damien left and Lila answered the call. Hi, Mom. Finally, I've been trying to reach you for days. Her mother's voice was sharp, familiar. Did you get my text about your brother's tuition? I got it. Well, can you help or not? Lila walked to the window, staring out at Damien's perfectly manicured lawn. I can't. Not right now. Why not? You just got some fancy new job. I know you can afford it. It's not about affording it, Mom. I have other expenses coming up. What expenses? You live in that shoebox apartment and work all the time? What could you possibly be spending money on? Lila took a deep breath. I'm pregnant. Silence. Then her mother's voice, colder than before. You're what? Pregnant, with twins, actually. Twins. Jesus, Lila. A bitter laugh. And let me guess, the father isn't in the picture. He is, actually, very much in the picture. Really? And who is this mystery man? Someone from work? Lila hesitated, then figured she might as well rip off the bandage. My boss. Damien Cross. More silence. Then her mother's voice dripping with disdain. You slept with your boss, got pregnant, and now you expect me to believe he's actually going to stick around? I don't expect you to believe anything, Mom. I'm just telling you what's happening. This is exactly like you, Lila, always making terrible decisions and expecting everyone else to clean up your messes. The words hit like they always did, sharp and precise, designed to wound. Lila had spent 30 years learning how to deflect them, but pregnancy hormones made her armor thinner. I'm not asking you to clean up anything. I'm just telling you why I can't help with Ryan's tuition. So your brother's education doesn't matter because you couldn't keep your legs closed? That's not... Lila stopped, breathing hard. I'm not doing this. I called to tell you about the pregnancy. If you can't be supportive, then we're done talking. Fine. Do whatever you want. You always do anyway. Her mother's voice turned icy. But don't come crying to me when he leaves and you're stuck raising 2 babies alone. You made your bed, Lila. Now lie in it. The line went dead. Lila stood there, phone pressed to her ear, feeling like she'd been hollowed out. She shouldn't be surprised. Her mother had never been warm, never been supportive, but some small, stupid part of her had hoped that maybe this time would be different. A soft knock on the door made her turn. Damien stood in the doorway, concern written across his face. Are you okay? Fine. Her voice cracked on the word. Lila, she thinks you're going to leave, thinks I'm an idiot for believing you'll stick around. The words spilled out before she could stop them. And maybe she's right. Maybe I am an idiot for thinking this could actually work. Damien crossed the room in 3 strides and pulled her into his arms. Lila resisted for maybe 2 seconds before collapsing against him, letting him hold her while she cried angry, frustrated tears. "Your mother is wrong," he said quietly, "about all of it. You don't know that." "Yes, I do." He pulled back enough to look at her. "I know I'm not leaving. I know you're not an idiot. And I know that whatever your mother said, it says more about her than it does about you. She's always been like this. Always made me feel like I was never good enough, never smart enough, never anything enough." "Then she's an idiot too." Damien's voice was fierce. "Because you're more than enough, Lila. You're exceptional." She wanted to believe him, wanted to let his words replace all the poisonous ones her mother had planted over the years. But 3 decades of conditioning didn't disappear because one person said nice things. "I should go," she said, pulling away. "I have packing to do, life to figure out." "Let me drive you home." "I can take the train." "Lila, please, let me drive you home." She was too tired to argue. They collected her coat, said goodbye to Sophie, who insisted on showing Lila her room first, a space that was somehow both age-appropriate and utterly perfect, and drove back to Queens in silence. When they pulled up to her building, Damien killed the engine. "I meant what I said, about all of it." He turned to face her. "I'm not your mother. I'm not going to disappear or make you feel like you're not enough. And if I do something that makes you feel that way, I need you to tell me so I can fix it." "You can't fix everything, Damien." "No, but I can try, if you let me." Lila looked at him, at this man who'd gone from her boss to the father of her children in the span of a few weeks, this man who'd offered her his home, his support, his presence, this man who was asking her to believe in something she'd never been able to believe in before. Trust. "Okay," she said quietly. "Okay? Okay, I'll let you try." She opened the car door. "But if you screw this up, I'm stealing one of those expensive paintings on my way out." He laughed. "Deal." Lila made it halfway to her building before turning back. Damien was watching her from the car, and something about the way he looked, worried, hopeful, completely invested, made her decision. She walked back to the car and tapped on his window. He rolled it down, eyebrows raised. "1 week," she said. "What?" "1 week, not 2. I'll move in 1 week from now, before I lose my nerve." Damien's smile was brilliant. "1 week. I'll be ready." "This is crazy," Lila muttered. "Completely crazy," he agreed. "But maybe that's okay." She walked away before she could change her mind, climbed the 5 flights of stairs to her apartment, and stood in the middle of her small living room looking at everything she'd built for herself. Then she pulled out her phone and started making a list of everything she'd need to pack. 1 week. 1 week until her life changed completely. 1 week until she found out if she'd made the best decision of her life or the worst mistake. Either way, there was no going back now. The week passed in a blur of cardboard boxes and goodbyes Lila didn't know how to say. Mrs. Chen cried when Lila told her she was moving, pressed 3 containers of dumplings into her hands, and made her promise to visit. Mr. Martinez at the bodega gave her a discount on her last purchase and told her to take care of herself. Even the landlord seemed almost sad when she turned in her keys, though that might have been because he was losing a tenant who always paid rent on time. Rebecca cornered her on Lila's last day at Cross Industries, eyes sharp with curiosity. "So you're really leaving, just like that?" "New opportunity, too good to pass up." Lila kept her voice light, professional. "At Meridian Tech. Convenient timing, considering Cross and Marcus Chen are friends." "It's a legitimate position, Rebecca. I interviewed for it." "I'm sure you did." Rebecca's smile didn't reach her eyes. "Just seems fast, that's all. 1 minute you're here, the next you're a VP somewhere else. People are talking. People always talk." Lila closed the last box on her desk. "Doesn't make it true." "Is it true you're moving to Connecticut?" Lila's hand stilled. "Where did you hear that?" "Patricia mentioned something about updating your address for HR. Said it was the same zip code as Cross's place." Rebecca leaned against the desk. "So is it true? You and the boss?" The urge to tell Rebecca exactly where she could shove her speculation was strong, but Lila had learned over the past year that engaging only made things worse. "My personal life is personal, Rebecca, but thanks for your concern." She picked up the box. I hope you find someone who can tolerate your questions better than I did. She left before Rebecca could respond, carried her box down to the lobby where Damien was supposed to meet her. He'd insisted on picking her up, and she'd been too tired to argue. He was waiting by the elevators, looking out of place in jeans and a sweater instead of his usual suit. When he saw her, he took the box from her hands without asking. Last one? Yeah. Finally. They walked to his car in silence. It wasn't until they were on the highway heading north that Damien spoke. Rebecca give you trouble? How did you... Patricia told me she'd been asking questions. Wanted to know if I should handle it. You don't need to handle anything. People are going to gossip no matter what we do. Lila stared out the window. Might as well get used to it. Doesn't mean I have to like it. No, but it means you have to accept it. She glanced at him. We both do. They drove the rest of the way in comfortable quiet, and Lila watched the city give way to suburbs, then to the kind of neighborhoods where houses had gates and lawns that required full-time gardeners. It still didn't feel real that she was going to live here, in this world so different from the one she'd fought her way out of. Margaret met them at the door, directing two men who were carrying in the last of Lila's furniture. It looked pathetic next to Damien's expensive things. Her second-hand couch with the stain she'd never quite gotten out, her dresser with the drawer that stuck, her kitchen table that wobbled unless you propped up one leg with folded cardboard. You don't have to keep any of this if you don't want to, Damien said quietly. I can have new furniture brought in. No, this is mine. I'm keeping it. Lila's voice was sharper than she intended. Sorry, I need something that's mine here. Does that make sense? Yeah, it does. Sophie appeared from somewhere deeper in the house, eyes wide at all the activity. Is Lila moving in? She asked Damien. She is. Is that okay with you? Sophie considered this seriously. Does this mean she's your girlfriend now? Damien looked at Lila helplessly. We're friends who are going to live in the same house, Lila supplied, like roommates. Emma Kay's mom has a roommate. They share a bed. Sophie tilted her head. Are you going to share a bed with Daddy? No, Lila said quickly. I have my own room, in the guest wing. Oh. Sophie looked disappointed. I thought maybe you'd get married like in the movies. Life's not like the movies, sweetheart, Damien said. I know. Movies are better. Sophie turned her attention to Lila. Do you want to see my room again? I got new stuffed animals. Lila let herself be dragged upstairs while Damien supervised the movers. Sophie's room was exactly as Lila remembered, carefully decorated but clearly lived in, with toys scattered across the floor and drawings taped to the walls. The new stuffed animals were piled on her bed, a collection of bears and rabbits, and one very sad-looking giraffe. That one's Gerald, Sophie said, pointing to the giraffe. He's sad because his neck is too long and he can't fit under my covers. That does sound difficult. Do you have stuffed animals? Not anymore. I had one when I was little, a dog named Buttons. What happened to Buttons? I lost him when we moved. Lila sat on the edge of Sophie's bed. I was really sad about it for a long time. Sophie climbed up beside her. Gerald the giraffe clutched in her arms. Were you sad like when someone dies? Or sad like when Emma G said she didn't want to be my friend anymore? More like the Emma G kind of sad. It hurt, but I got over it eventually. Did you get a new stuffed animal? No, we couldn't afford it. My mom worked a lot, and we didn't have money for extra things. Sophie processed this with the seriousness only a 6-year-old could manage. That's sad. Everyone should have stuffed animals. You're very wise, Sophie. I know, Daddy says I'm smart like my mom was. She swung her legs against the bed. Do you think you'll like living here? I don't know yet. It's very different from where I used to live. Different good or different bad? Just different. I'll have to get used to it. Sophie nodded like this made perfect sense. When my friend Marcus moved to a new house, he said it was weird at first, but then it got normal. Maybe it'll get normal for you too. Maybe, Lila smiled. Thanks, Sophie. You're welcome. Do you want to stay for dinner? Margaret's making spaghetti and it's really good. I'd like that. They went back downstairs to find the movers gone and Damien standing in what was now Lila's sitting room, looking at her furniture like he was trying to solve a puzzle. The couch looks good there, Lila said. I was thinking the same thing. He turned to her. You settling in okay? Getting there. Sophie invited me to dinner. Did she? Damien smiled. She doesn't usually warm up to people this fast. I'm very charming. Clearly. They had spaghetti at the kitchen table, a massive thing that could seat 12 but felt almost intimate with just the four of them. Margaret served the food and then disappeared, giving them privacy. Sophie talked non-stop about school and her friends and a boy named Tyler who'd pulled her hair at recess. Damien listened with the kind of attention that suggested he actually cared about first-grade drama, asking questions and offering advice that was surprisingly good. Lila watched them together and felt something shift in her chest. This was what a family looked like. Not perfect, not like the movies Sophie referenced, but real. Messy and loud and filled with people who showed up for each other. After dinner, Sophie insisted on showing Lila her favorite movie, something animated involving talking animals and a questionable plot. They watched it curled up on the couch in the den, Sophie between them, providing running commentary on every scene. This part is sad, she warned right before the main character's mother died. Thanks for the heads up, Lila said. You're welcome. Emma L. cries every time, but I don't because I'm tough. Very tough, Damien agreed, ruffling her hair. By the time the movie ended, Sophie was yawning, fighting sleep with the determination of a child who didn't want to miss anything. Damien carried her upstairs for bed, and Lila heard him reading a story through the open door, his voice soft and patient as Sophie interrupted with questions. When he came back down, he found Lila still on the couch, staring at nothing. She's out, he said. Didn't even make it through the first chapter. She's sweet. She likes you. That's huge. Damien sat beside her, close but not touching. How are you feeling about all of this? Overwhelmed, scared, like I'm waiting for the other shoe to drop. Lila turned to face him. This is too good, Damien. The house, the job, you being decent about everything. People like me don't get this kind of luck. It's not luck. And what do you mean people like you? People who grew up with nothing, who clawed their way to stability and are always waiting for it to be ripped away. She pulled her knees to her chest. I keep thinking this is temporary, that I'll wake up and it'll all be gone. Damien was quiet for a moment. When Caroline died, I spent months convinced it was my fault, that if I'd been there, been different, been better, she would have lived. It took my therapist a long time to get through to me that some things just happen. They're not punishment or karma or anything else. They're just life. Are you saying this, us, the babies, all of it, is just life? I'm saying maybe we both need to stop waiting for disaster and start believing we deserve something good. He took her hand. You deserve this, Lila. The job you earned, the home I'm offering, a partner who wants to be here. All of it. Lila wanted to believe him, wanted to silence the voice in her head that sounded too much like her mother, telling her she wasn't good enough, wasn't worthy of anything beyond what she could scrape together herself. I'm going to try, she said finally. To believe it. I can't promise I'll succeed, but I'll try. That's all I'm asking. They sat like that for a while, hands linked, the house quiet around them. Eventually, Damien stood and pulled her to her feet. Come on, I'll help you unpack. You don't have to. I know, but I want to. They spent the next 2 hours organizing Lila's things in her new space. Damien hung clothes in the closet while she arranged books on the shelves, and they worked in the kind of comfortable silence that came from being at ease with each other. By the time they finished, it was past midnight, and Lila was exhausted. Get some sleep, Damien said at her door. First day at Meridian tomorrow. You need to be sharp. Thanks for the reminder. Really helpful for my anxiety. He smiled. You're going to be great. You don't know that. Yes, I do. He hesitated, then leaned in and kissed her forehead. Good night, Lila. He was gone before she could respond, leaving her standing in her doorway with her heart doing complicated things. She closed the door, got ready for bed, and lay in the darkness of her new room listening to the unfamiliar sounds of an unfamiliar house. Somewhere down the hall, a clock chimed 1. Outside, wind moved through the trees. And in the room next to hers, the one that would eventually hold 2 cribs, her future waited. The next morning, Lila woke to sunlight streaming through windows she hadn't remembered to cover, and the smell of coffee drifting from somewhere in the house. She dragged herself out of bed, threw on clothes suitable for a first day at a new job, and followed the coffee smell to the kitchen. Margaret was there, arranging breakfast on the counter with military precision. Scrambled eggs, toast, fresh fruit, and coffee that smelled like heaven. "Good morning, dear. I wasn't sure what you usually eat, so I made options." "This is perfect. Thank you." Lila poured herself coffee, then remembered. "Wait, can I have coffee? The pregnancy book said, 1 cup is fine," Margaret said. "I raised 3 children. Trust me, a little coffee won't hurt." Lila took a grateful sip and felt more human. Damien appeared a few minutes later, already dressed for work, with Sophie trailing behind him in pajamas. "First day," he said to Lila. "Nervous?" "Terrified." "Good. Means you care." He grabbed a piece of toast. "Marcus is expecting you at 9. Don't let him intimidate you. He's all bark." "Your confidence in me is inspiring." "You'll be fine." He kissed Sophie's head. "Be good for Margaret today, princess." "I'm always good," Sophie said through a mouthful of eggs. Damien left for his office, and Lila finished breakfast while Sophie provided detailed updates on her plans for the day, which apparently involved a lot of drawing and maybe convincing Margaret to make cookies. By 8:30, Lila was in her car, a modest sedan that looked embarrassingly out of place in Damien's garage, next to his Mercedes and Sophie's car seat, driving to Meridian Tech. The first day was exactly as overwhelming as she'd expected. Marcus introduced her to what felt like 50 people whose names she'd never remember, walked her through systems she'd need weeks to understand, and left her with a stack of documentation thick enough to qualify as a weapon. By lunch, her head was spinning. She ate at her desk, scrolling through emails and trying to prioritize the chaos, when her phone buzzed. "How's it going?" "Damien. Drowning in information. Send help. You've got this. Remember, you're exceptional. You have to say that. I'm carrying your babies. I'd say it anyway. It just happens to also be true." Lila smiled despite her stress and got back to work. The afternoon was more of the same. Meetings, introductions, learning curves so steep they were practically vertical. By 5 p.m., she was ready to collapse. But Marcus caught her before she could leave. "Got a minute?" They went to his office, and he closed the door behind them. "I wanted to check in, see how you're feeling after day 1. "Honestly? Overwhelmed, but in a good way, I think." Lila sat across from him. "There's a lot to learn." "There is, but I have faith you'll pick it up fast." He leaned back in his chair. "Damien spoke highly of you, and Damien doesn't speak highly of many people. We worked together for a year. He saw what I could do. He also cares about you. That was pretty obvious when he called asking me to interview you." Lila's face heated. It's complicated." "Most things worth doing are." Marcus smiled. "Look, I don't care about your personal life as long as it doesn't affect your work, but I do care that you know you earned this position. Whatever relationship you have with Damien, that's separate from the fact that you're damn good at what you do." "Thank you. I needed to hear that." "Good. Because I'm going to work you hard, Monroe. I need someone who can handle the pressure and push back when I'm being an idiot. Think you can do that?" "Absolutely." "Excellent. Get out of here. Go home. Start fresh tomorrow." Lila drove back to Damien's house. Her house now, she corrected herself, and found Sophie in the den watching cartoons while Margaret prepared dinner. Damien wasn't home yet, still at the office dealing with whatever billionaire CEOs dealt with. "How was your first day?" Sophie asked, barely looking away from the TV. "Long, but good." "That's what Daddy says about work. Long, but good." Sophie finally looked at her. "Do you want to watch cartoons with me?" "Sure. Why not?" They watched cartoons until Damien came home an hour later, looking tired but pleased to find them both on the couch. "How'd it go?" he asked Lila. "I survived. That's something. That's everything." He loosened his tie. "I'm going to change. Be right back." Dinner was quieter than the night before, all of them exhausted in different ways. After Sophie went to bed, Damien and Lila ended up in the den again, like it was becoming their spot. "This is strange, right?" Lila said. "Us living together, playing house, pretending this is normal?" "Extremely strange." Damien stretched out on the couch. "But I kind of like it." "You like the strange part or the living together part?" "Both." He looked at her. "Is it too strange for you?" "I don't know yet. Ask me again in a month. The weeks that followed fell into a rhythm that surprised Lila with how natural it felt. She'd wake up, have breakfast with Sophie, and sometimes Damien if he wasn't already at the office, drive to Meridian where she'd spend the day building systems and managing chaos. She'd come home to Sophie's questions about her day, dinner with a family that wasn't quite hers but was starting to feel like it could be, an evening spent with Damien talking about everything and nothing. They didn't rush anything, didn't force conversations about what they were or where this was going. They just existed together, learning each other slowly. Lila learned that Damien was a terrible cook, but insisted on trying anyway, resulting in several kitchen disasters that had Margaret threatening to ban him from the stove. She learned that he talked to himself when he worked, muttering about stock prices and market trends like they were personal enemies. She learned that he read Sophie 3 stories every night, even when he was exhausted, and that he kept a photo of Caroline in his office drawer but never on display. Damien learned that Lila stress cleaned, which meant the guest wing had never been more organized. He learned that she hated mornings but loved late nights, that she could fix almost anything with a YouTube tutorial and determination, and that she cried at commercials when her hormones were acting up, but would deny it if asked. Sophie learned that Lila would play endless games of pretend, that she gave the best advice about Emma-related drama, and that she was teaching herself piano so they could practice together. By Christmas, Lila was 5 months pregnant and starting to show enough that hiding it was impossible. She'd told Marcus, who'd congratulated her, and immediately started planning her maternity coverage. She'd told Margaret, who'd started knitting tiny blankets with frightening efficiency. She'd even told Rebecca in a brief, awkward phone call that ended with Rebecca saying she'd known something was up and Lila hanging up before the conversation could get worse. The one person she hadn't told was standing in her living room on Christmas Eve, having shown up unannounced with her brother in tow. Lila opened the door to find her mother and Ryan on the doorstep, and her heart sank. "Hi, Mom, Ryan." "Lila, we were in the area, thought we'd stop by." Her mother's eyes swept over the house behind Lila, taking in every detail. "This is where you're living now?" "Yeah, yes. Can we come in or are we going to stand on the porch all night?" Lila stepped aside and they entered. Ryan whistled low at the foyer. "Damn, sis, you really landed in it, didn't you?" "It's not like that, isn't it?" Her mother's voice was sharp. "You're living in a mansion with a billionaire. What else would you call it?" "I'd call it co-parenting." "Which I already explained to you on the phone." "Right. Co-parenting. In his house. Very convenient." Damien appeared from the kitchen, and Lila watched her mother's expression shift as she took him in. The expensive casual clothes, the confidence, the way he moved like he owned everything he touched, which, technically, he did. "You must be Lila's mother," Damien said, extending his hand. "I'm Damien Cross." Her mother shook his hand, her smile tight. "Janet Monroe. This is my son, Ryan." "Nice to meet you both. Lila's mentioned you." "Has she?" Janet's eyes were calculating. "She's mentioned you too, though she left out quite a few details." "Mom," Lila started. "What?" "I'm just saying, you tell me you're pregnant with twins, living with the father, but you don't mention he's one of the richest men in the country. That seems like relevant information." "My net worth isn't relevant to our situation," Damien said calmly. "What's relevant is that we're preparing to raise our children together." "How noble!" Janet's voice dripped sarcasm. "And when you get bored of playing house? What happens to Lila and those babies then?" "Mom, that's enough." "I'm not going anywhere," Damien said, his voice going cold. "I understand you're concerned about your daughter, but questioning my commitment to my children isn't appropriate." "Isn't it? You're a billionaire with a reputation for ruthless business deals. Forgive me for wondering how long before you apply that same ruthlessness to my daughter." The tension in the room was suffocating. Lila felt her face burning, humiliation and anger warring for dominance. "You need to leave," she said quietly. "Lila, no. You came here uninvited, insulted Damien in his own home, and made assumptions about my life that you know nothing about, so you need to leave now." Her mother's face hardened. "Fine. Come on, Ryan." Ryan looked between them, clearly uncomfortable, then followed his mother to the door. Janet paused on the threshold. "Don't come crying to me when this falls apart, Lila. I warned you." The door closed behind them, and Lila stood in the foyer, shaking. I'm sorry, she said to Damien. I didn't know they were coming. I would have warned you. Hey, he pulled her into his arms. You don't have to apologize for her. She was horrible to you. She was protecting you. In her own terrible way. He kissed the top of her head. I've dealt with worse in boardrooms. Trust me. That doesn't make it okay. No, but it makes it understandable. He pulled back to look at her. Are you okay? Lila thought about it, about her mother's words, her assumptions, her complete inability to see that maybe, just maybe, Lila had found something real. Yeah, she said, I am. Because she was. Despite everything, despite her mother's poison and her own lingering doubts, she was okay. Better than okay. She was home. The twins were born on a Tuesday in late April, 5 weeks early, and screaming loud enough to wake the entire maternity ward. Lila had been at Meridian in the middle of a presentation about Q2 projections when her water broke. Marcus had driven her to the hospital himself while calling Damien, who'd arrived 20 minutes later looking terrified. The labor was long and painful, and nothing like the books described. Lila screamed at Damien, at the nurses, at the universe in general for making childbirth so horrible. And through it all, Damien stayed, held her hand until she crushed his fingers, breathed with her through contractions, and didn't flinch when she told him she hated him and this was all his fault. When it was over, when 2 tiny, perfect babies were placed in her arms, she looked at Damien and saw tears streaming down his face. A boy and a girl, the nurse said. Congratulations. Lila stared at her children, at these impossible small humans she'd made, and felt something fundamental shift inside her. This was real. This was hers. They were hers. They're perfect, Damien whispered. They're so small. They're early, but they're healthy. That's what matters. Over the next few days, the hospital became their world. Lila learned to breastfeed twins, which was infinitely harder than anyone had let on. Damien learned to change diapers with the kind of determination he usually reserved for hostile takeovers. And together, they figured out how to be parents to 2 tiny humans who needed them completely. Sophie met her siblings on day 3, eyes wide as she stared at the babies in their bassinets. They're really small, she said. They'll get bigger, Damien promised. Can I hold them? When we get home. Right now they need to stay warm. What are their names? Lila and Damien exchanged looks. They discussed names for weeks, but never settled on anything. What do you think they should be named? Lila asked. Sophie considered this with the seriousness of a Supreme Court justice. The boy looks like a James, and the girl looks like a Rose. James and Rose, Damien repeated. I like it. Me too, Lila said. And just like that, their children had names. They brought the twins home a week later to a house that had been transformed. The empty bedroom was now filled with 2 cribs, changing tables, and enough baby equipment to supply a small daycare. Margaret had prepared meals for the next month. Sophie had drawn welcome home signs and taped them everywhere. The first night was chaos. James and Rose cried in shifts, ensuring that someone was always awake. Lila fed one while Damien walked the other, and they moved through the darkness like zombies, operating on instinct and desperation. By 3 a.m., Lila was sitting in the nursery, Rose finally asleep in her arms, and watching Damien pace with James. This is insane, she said. Completely insane, he agreed. I don't know how we're going to do this. Neither do I. But we'll figure it out. And somehow, impossibly, they did. The weeks turned into months. Lila went back to work part-time at Meridian, splitting her days between the office and home. Damien adjusted his schedule to be home more, working from his study while the twins napped. Margaret became an absolute lifesaver, helping with the logistics of managing 2 infants and a 6-year-old. Sophie thrived as a big sister, reading to the twins even though they couldn't understand her, showing them her toys, and reporting to anyone who'd listen that she had a baby brother and sister now. And somewhere in the midst of the chaos, between midnight feedings and diaper blowouts and the crushing exhaustion of new parenthood, Lila and Damien fell in love. Not the dramatic movie-style love, but the real kind. The kind built on showing up, on trusting someone to hold you when you're falling apart, on watching them be gentle with your children and knowing they'll do the same for you. It happened in small moments, Damien bringing her coffee when she'd been up all night, Lila organizing his office when he couldn't find anything, dancing in the kitchen at 2 a.m. while the twins slept, both of them too tired to stand but too wired to sleep. Stolen kisses in the hallway between crisis management, hands linked under the table at family dinners. One night, 6 months after the twins were born, Damien found Lila in the nursery. She was sitting in the rocking chair, both babies asleep on her chest, looking exhausted but content. "They're finally down," she whispered. "You're a miracle worker." He sat on the floor beside the chair. "Can I ask you something?" "Sure." "Are you happy?" "Here. With all of this?" Lila looked around the nursery, at the cribs she'd helped pick out, the blankets Margaret had knitted, the photos of Sophie holding her siblings. She thought about her life a year ago, alone in that Queen's apartment, convinced she'd always be fighting for scraps. "Yeah," she said, "I'm happy." "Good." Damien took her hand. "Because I love you. I'm in love with you. And I know we said we'd take this slow, but I don't want to wait anymore to tell you that." Lila's breath caught. "You love me?" "Completely. Terrifyingly. All of it." He smiled. "You don't have to say it back. I just needed you to know." "I love you too," she said, the words easier than she'd expected. "I think I have for a while now. I was just too scared to admit it." "Scared of what?" "That it wasn't real. That I'd wake up and you'd be gone. That I'd ruin it somehow." She looked down at the babies sleeping on her chest. "But I'm tired of being scared. I'm tired of waiting for disaster. I just want to be here, with you, with our family." Damien stood and kissed her, gentle so as not to wake the twins, but full of promise. "Marry me," he said against her lips. "What?" "Marry me. Not because it's what people do or because it looks good or any of the bullshit reasons, but because I want to build a life with you. A real one. The messy, complicated, beautiful kind." Lila should have said she needed time to think, should have been practical about it. But sitting there in the nursery with their sleeping children and this man who'd proven over and over that he wasn't going anywhere, practicality seemed overrated. "Yes," she said. "Yes? Yes, I'll marry you." They got married 6 months later in the garden behind the house, with Sophie as flower girl and the twins crying through the entire ceremony. It was small, just family and close friends, and nothing like the elaborate affairs Damien had been expected to have. It was perfect. Lila wore a simple dress that accommodated the fact that she was still losing baby weight and didn't care. Damien wore a suit but no tie, looking relaxed in a way he rarely did. Margaret cried through the whole thing. Marcus gave a speech about how he'd known they were perfect for each other the moment Lila had pushed back in her interview. And when the officiant pronounced them married, Sophie cheered loud enough to startle both twins into renewed crying. "Welcome to the family," Damien said, kissing his wife. "I've been part of the family for a while now," Lila pointed out. "True, but now it's official." They honeymooned in the Hamptons for a long weekend, leaving the twins with Margaret and Sophie at home. It was the first time they'd been alone together, really alone, since before Lila had gotten pregnant. "This is weird," Lila said on their first night, lying in bed in a rental house that was probably worth more than most people's homes. "Weird how?" "Quiet. No one crying or needing anything. Just us." "I like just us." Damien pulled her closer. "Though I do miss the chaos a little." "Liar." "Okay, I miss them. Not the chaos. We should call Margaret, check on them. We literally called an hour ago. They're fine." "But what if—" Damien kissed her, cutting off the spiral of worry. "They're fine. Margaret's got it handled. We're allowed to have this time for ourselves." "No, I'm just not used to it." "Neither am I. But I'm willing to learn." They spent the weekend learning how to be just Lila and Damien again, not parents or coworkers or people managing crises. Learning that they actually liked each other beyond the logistics of raising children. Learning that the love they'd built in the chaos was strong enough to survive the quiet too. When they got home, the twins were bigger somehow, even though it had only been 3 days. Sophie had 1,000 stories about what had happened while they were gone, and the house felt more like home than ever. Life settled into a new rhythm. The twins started sleeping through the night, which felt like a miracle. Sophie started 2nd grade and made a friend named Oliver, who wasn't named Emma, which she considered a major achievement. Lila got promoted to senior VP at Meridian, leading a team of 20 and loving every challenging minute of it. Damien sold Cross Industries. It was a decision that surprised everyone, including Lila. But sitting in his office one night while she fed James and he held Rose, he explained it. I built that company to prove something. To myself, to my father who said I'd never make it, to everyone who doubted me. But I proved it. And I'm tired of sacrificing time with my family to maintain something I don't need to prove anymore. What will you do? Consult. Invest. Spend more time with you and the kids. He smiled. Maybe learn to actually cook instead of just burning things. Now I know you're crazy. Crazy about you. That was terrible. I know, but you smiled. The sale went through 6 months later for an amount that made Lila's head spin. Damien donated half of it to various charities, set up trust funds for all 3 kids, and kept enough that they'd never have to worry about money again. He started teaching Sophie piano, built a treehouse in the backyard with James and Rose's help, even though they were only 2 and mostly just knocked things over, showed up at Lila's office with lunch on hard days, became the kind of father and husband he'd always wanted to be but had been too afraid to try. And Lila learned to accept it, learned to stop waiting for disaster, learned that sometimes, impossibly, things actually worked out. Years later, standing in that same garden where they'd gotten married, watching Sophie graduate high school while the twins chased each other through the roses, Lila thought about the ultrasound that had fallen at Damien's feet all those years ago. How one moment of panic had led to this, to a family she'd never imagined she could have, to a love she'd never believed she deserved, to a life that was messy and chaotic and absolutely nothing like she'd planned. It was better. Damien appeared beside her, slipping his hand into hers. What are you thinking about? He asked. How far we've come. How different everything is from that day in your office. Best mistake I ever made, he said. It wasn't a mistake. No. He smiled. It was the beginning. The twins ran past, arguing about something incomprehensible, and Sophie called after them to be careful. The sun was setting over the garden, painting everything gold, and Lila Monroe Cross, who'd spent 30 years fighting for scraps and believing she'd always be alone, stood surrounded by her family and knew exactly what she'd found. Home. Not a place. Not a house with gates and gardens. But people. Love. The messy, complicated, beautiful truth that sometimes the best things in life came from the moments when everything fell apart. And sometimes, if you were brave enough to let someone catch you, they did.